Robert De Niro has never been the kind of actor who wears his heart on his sleeve. He's spent a lifetime letting his performances do the talking, the quiet intensity, the razor-sharp stares, the moments where silence said more than dialogue could.
That you know what to do.
But when the subject in question is about Martin Scorsese, things change. For over 5 decades, their names have been linked in a way that is rare in Hollywood. By rare, I mean in a good way. Think of it: 10 films, countless stories, and a bond that has shaped modern cinema as we know it. And now at 82, Robert De Niro is finally opening up about what that relationship really means to him.
Yeah, we got hung up on the bad and the beautiful in 2 weeks in another town.
They say some friendships are meant to be, even long before they meet. For De Niro and Scorsese, that was the case. They had known each other as kids, but weren't really friends. Scorsese was heading towards filmmaking, while De Niro was already trying out how the acting world was, acting in small things and just observing.
I had known Marty from a distance as kids. We had a mutual.
De Niro later remembered meeting Scorsese at a Christmas dinner after seeing his film, Who's That Knocking? He told Marty, "That was a really terrific movie." Marty said he had a script in hand. The film that followed Mean Streets was originally called Season of the Witch. That was the spark.
When we met at this dinner, this Christmas dinner, I said, "That's really a terrific movie."
There wasn't anything flashy about their start. No grand meeting in a Hollywood studio. Just 2 young guys in New York, talking about stories, watching films, trying to figure out what to do. De Niro has said of Scorsese, "Marty is very sensitive about people and actors. He takes what actors give him and uses it. He is aware and well-informed about things and likes to read stuff." Marty saw something in De Niro, not just raw energy, but hunger to create masterpieces. De Niro saw a director who had vision and respect, someone who cared about the small details almost more than the big scenes. This early period shaped their respect for each other. They were figuring things out together. What kind of actor De Niro wanted to be? What kind of filmmaker Scorsese wanted to become? There were missteps, of course. Being young, being ambitious, being broke or uncertain, it was part of the territory. But each project, each conversation, each shared coffee or script draft built trust. Mean Streets wasn't just their first major film together, it was the moment they discovered that their collaboration might be something more than work. Maybe it was the start of a lifelong journey. In those days, Scorsese wasn't established. De Niro wasn't famous yet, but the way they saw each other, the way they tested limits, the way they trusted each other that set the tone. When people talk about De Niro and Scorsese, they usually start with Mean Streets. That's the film that lit the fuse. Shot on a tight budget, it wasn't meant to be a blockbuster, it was a passion project. But the raw energy of it, the way Scorsese captured New York, and the way De Niro slipped into the role of Johnny Boy made Hollywood stop and look.
It's off. I don't know if you guys saw it, but you can get it on something, probably YouTube or something.
Showtime.
Suddenly, these 2 young artists weren't just hustling, they were creating something electric. De Niro's Johnny Boy was unpredictable, reckless, dangerous, and oddly magnetic. It was the kind of role most actors would have been scared to touch, too volatile, too messy. But De Niro dove in headfirst, and Scorsese gave him the freedom to play. That dynamic, Marty building the world and De Niro bringing its wildest souls to life, would become the blueprint for their collaborations.
The heart of this character in this situation.
Then came the 1976 movie Taxi Driver, the film that would permanently stitch their names together in movie history. Travis Bickle wasn't just another character, he was an icon of alienation, loneliness, and rage. De Niro's performance, paired with Scorsese's unflinching direction, created one of the most haunting portraits of urban isolation ever put on screen. The famous, "You talking to me?" The scene wasn't even scripted, it was De Niro improvising in front of the mirror, something Scorsese encouraged him to do. That trust, that willingness to let the actor push beyond the page, defined their partnership. The world noticed. Taxi Driver won the Palme d'Or at Cannes in 1976, cementing Scorsese as one of the boldest directors of his generation, and De Niro as an actor who could go to terrifying emotional depths. The critical and cultural impact was seismic suddenly. These 2 weren't just promising talents. They were shaping the new American cinema, but it was Raging Bull that proved what they were really capable of. De Niro trained for over a year as a boxer, fought in real matches, and later gained over 60 pounds to play Jake LaMotta in his later years. The physical transformation was extreme, but the emotional intensity was even greater. Scorsese captured the brutality of the ring and the self-destruction of the man, while De Niro embodied LaMotta with a rawness that was both terrifying and tragic. The performance earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. What made these films resonate wasn't just great acting or sharp direction, it was the chemistry between the two men. Scorsese knew how to tap into De Niro's obsession with detail, his commitment to going all in. De Niro, in turn, trusted Scorsese's vision completely. Together, they pushed each other to go further than they could have gone alone. By the early 80s, the De Niro-Scorsese partnership wasn't just a director-actor collaboration, it was a cultural force. Each film felt like a statement, a challenge, and a new chapter in the story of American cinema. Looking back, it's clear these weren't just movies, they were moments that changed the landscape of storytelling forever. What makes De Niro's and Scorsese's relationship so fascinating is that it's never been just about the movies. Yes, the films are legendary, but off-camera, there's a genuine friendship that has lasted for more than half a century. In Hollywood, where friendships often die after one or two projects, the fact that these two men have stayed so close is a rare sight.
It gets to the point where, we don't see each other for a few months, but when we see each other, it's yeah.
De Niro has said he considers himself very lucky to have that long of a relationship with him. I can't imagine my life without it. That's not the kind of thing he says lightly. Known for being reserved, De Niro isn't in the habit of gushing about people. So when he talks about Scorsese in those terms, it tells you everything you need to know. Friends of both men have often commented on how their bond feels more like family. They show up for each other's milestone. When De Niro was honored at the Kennedy Center in 2009, Scorsese was there to speak about him.
All Bob had to do was sit there and not say anything and just stare at me with the back of his head.
When Scorsese received his long-awaited Oscar for The Departed in 2007, De Niro was one of the first to celebrate. These aren't just professional nods, they're the kind of gestures that come from decades of loyalty.
The ways is, if it wasn't for Marty, I'd be spending tonight in Bakersfield.
Their friendship has always carried a sense of ease. They're not the type who need constant check-ins or big public displays. Instead, there's a quiet understanding between them, a comfort that comes from knowing the other person is always in your corner. Even as their careers pulled them in different directions, that mutual respect kept their bond steady. Their friendship has withstood the test of time and silence. There were long stretches when they didn't make films together, nearly 2 decades, between Casino 1995 and The Irishman, which was released in 2019. But even when they weren't working side by side, they stayed close. When Scorsese faced serious health issues in the late 70s, De Niro was one of the people who stood by him. Their friendship has weathered personal struggles, career ups and downs, and even the changing tides of Hollywood itself. At its core, it isn't built on contracts or red carpets. It's built on trust, history, and shared life experience. In an industry known for its temporary alliances, De Niro and Scorsese's friendship is proof that some bonds can outlast the spotlight. When people look back at the greatest pairings in Hollywood, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese are always right there at the top. Their names are linked not just because they made great movies, but because those movies changed the way people think about cinema.
Actually, it's none of that. We were just chatting.
They weren't chasing flashy blockbusters or easy heroes. Instead, they told stories that felt raw, human, and sometimes uncomfortable, but impossible to forget. One of the biggest things they gave cinema was honesty. Scorsese brought the streets of New York to life, the crowded bars, the voices, the rhythm of the city. De Niro then stepped into those scenes and filled them with characters that felt real, with all their flaws and contradictions.
Seemed to see life and ourselves in a strikingly...
Together, they shifted movies away from the clean-cut image of Hollywood and into something grittier, more believable. Their films didn't just entertain, they sparked conversations. Taxi Driver forced America to confront loneliness and urban decay. Raging Bull showed how far an actor could push himself to embody another person. Goodfellas didn't just tell a mob story, it became the model for crime dramas that came after. From The Sopranos to Breaking Bad, each of these movies left a cultural footprint, the kind that doesn't fade with time.
This work over the years is all based on a profound trust.
Other filmmakers noticed too. Directors like Quentin Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson have spoken about how Scorsese's style and De Niro's performances influenced them. The mix of improvisation, tight direction, and emotional depth became a kind of playbook for the next wave of filmmakers. Even today, film students study their collaborations to learn how to make stories that hit harder than just surface-level drama. Another part of their legacy is simply how long it has lasted. Partnerships in Hollywood don't usually stretch across 5 decades. But De Niro and Scorsese managed it. They moved from the gritty 70s to the glossy 90s, and even into the streaming era without losing their identity. When The Irishman landed on Netflix in 2019, it wasn't just another gangster movie. It felt like a closing chapter on themes they'd been exploring for years: loyalty, betrayal, and aging. And it showed that even in a changing industry, they still had the power to command attention. At the end of the day, their legacy isn't about box office numbers or trophies, though they've had plenty. It's about trust, bold choices, and the courage to tell stories that stick with you long after the credits roll. De Niro and Scorsese didn't just make movies together, they built a body of work that shaped modern cinema and inspired generations. The magic of the De Niro-Scorsese partnership doesn't just lie in the films themselves, it's rooted in the way they work together. From the outside, it might look like any other actor-director relationship, but theirs has a special pattern. At the heart of it is Scorsese trusting De Niro to dive deeper than the script, and De Niro trusting Scorsese to capture those choices in a way that makes them unforgettable. Scorsese is famously meticulous. He obsesses over music cues, camera angles, and even the way a character's tie should sit. De Niro is just as relentless on his end. Before shooting Raging Bull, he trained as a real boxer for months, then later deliberately gained more than 60 pounds to portray Jake LaMotta's decline.
You want people to walk away with after seeing this film, what would it be?
That's not just commitment, it's obsession with a character. When you put two perfectionists together, it could easily clash. But instead, they found a balance. Scorsese builds the world in detail, and De Niro steps inside it with the same intensity, filling every corner with a living, breathing character. Improvisation is another pillar of their process. Take Taxi Driver, the now legendary "You Talking to Me?" scene wasn't in the script. De Niro came up with it while standing in front of the mirror, exploring Travis Bickle's unraveling psyche. Instead of shutting it down, Scorsese gave him the space to run with it. That scene has since become one of the most quoted moments in cinema history. That's the kind of freedom Scorsese gives his actors, and De Niro, in particular, thrives in that space. Their collaboration also works because it isn't one-sided. De Niro doesn't just show up, hit his marks, and leave the rest to the director. He asks questions, he challenges ideas, and he isn't afraid to suggest changes if he feels something isn't authentic. Scorsese, rather than brushing this off, listens. He's open to De Niro's instincts because he knows they come from a place of deep preparation. On the flip side, Scorsese isn't afraid to push De Niro harder. He'll demand another take, shift the energy, or refine the performance until it clicks. That back and forth has never been about ego. It's always about chasing the truth of the story. What's remarkable is the way they communicate. In interviews, both men have admitted they don't need long conversations on set. After so many years, a glance, a small gesture, or even silence can be enough. That shorthand is rare in Hollywood. Most actors and directors take time to find their rhythm. But De Niro and Scorsese have had it for decades. It allows them to dig deeper, faster, and with more confidence than almost anyone else. That level of understanding also explains their willingness to take risks. When Scorsese wanted to make The Irishman, a film that relied heavily on de-aging technology, there was a chance it could backfire. But De Niro trusted Scorsese's vision, just as Scorsese trusted De Niro to anchor the performance no matter how the technology played out. Decades earlier, when De Niro wanted to transform himself so completely for Raging Bull, Scorsese stood behind him. Neither man has ever shied away from a bold choice, because they know the other will rise to the occasion. Over time, their creative process has become less about technicalities and more about instinct. They don't just collaborate, they anticipate each other. Scorsese knows when De Niro is holding something back, and De Niro knows when Scorsese is searching for a different angle. That kind of intuition only comes from years of building trust, and it's what makes their work feel so alive. In the end, their process isn't about rigid planning or even perfect execution. It's about creating a space where both can stretch, explore, and sometimes stumble, knowing the other will be there to catch them. That safety net, the sense that they can take risks without fear, is the real secret to their partnership. It's why their films still carry a charge, decades later. They're not just the result of two great talents, but of two people who trust each other completely to tell the truth on screen. Even after more than 50 years working together, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese continue to look back on their journey with a mix of pride, gratitude, and quiet amusement. It's not often that a director-actor relationship lasts this long without tension or fading interest. but both men have spoken about the unusual ease of their connection.
De Niro and myself, Bob, we worked in so many films together that we grew.
They describe it less like a professional collaboration and more like a shared adventure one that has allowed them to grow as artists and as individuals.
So we didn't think of each other as stars and that sort of thing.
De Niro has said that working with Scorsese has always made him feel like he can try anything as an actor. Unlike typical jobs where actors are handed a script and told to perform, Scorsese encourages exploration. De Niro looks back on his decades of collaboration and marvels at how much he learned just by being in the director's orbit. From the pacing of a scene to the emotional layers of a character, he considers each film a lesson in storytelling. Scorsese, on his end, often reflects on how rare it is to find an actor who completely understands what he's trying to achieve. He has described De Niro as an essential collaborator and brother rather than just a performer, someone who brings insight and instinct into every moment. Looking back, Scorsese frequently credits De Niro not just for his talent, but for his willingness to take risks, challenge the material, and push boundaries in ways that Scorsese himself might not have imagined. Their reflections aren't just about the big iconic roles. They often talk about the quieter moments too, the early shoots, the long discussions over scripts, and even the pauses between films that allowed them to step back and reassess. These gaps, Scorsese has noted, kept their relationship fresh and prevented the kind of burnout that often plagues long-term collaborations. For De Niro, it was a chance to absorb life experiences that later enriched his performances. Both men also reflect on how their work together has influenced others. They've witnessed generations of filmmakers study their films, imitate their techniques, and build upon the foundation they created. But instead of feeling competitive or territorial, they express a quiet pride in knowing that their joint efforts have become part of the cultural fabric, shaping not just cinema, but the expectations audiences bring to performances and storytelling. Finally, there's a human element in their reflections. Neither hides the affection and respect they have for each other. When they look back, it's not just about movies or awards, it's about trust, shared experiences, and the unique bond that has allowed two strong, passionate personalities to thrive side by side for decades. For De Niro, reflecting on their journey isn't nostalgic, it's grounding. It's a reminder that great art often comes from relationships built on mutual respect, curiosity, and a willingness to push each other further than either could go alone. 50 years later, they still share that spark, that excitement of discovering something new together, and that's perhaps the most remarkable thing of all. After half a century, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese's bond remains one of cinema's greatest treasures. It's not just about the films they've made, it's about the trust, honesty, and friendship that carried them through decades of change. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.